Relations Commission and the Urban League of Philadelphia. I will make initial introductions and then I will ask each one of our panelists to explain the mission and vision of their organization, and we'll dig right into the issues. We thank you for coming out today. Please, by all means, place your active profile on mute. If you are seeking to add comments or questions, please put them in the chat profile or raise your hand, and you will be acknowledged accordingly. I'll start with Judge Renee Caldwell-Hughes. Renee Caldwell-Hughes is the president and CEO of Opportunities Industrialization Center. We know it here in Philadelphia, it's Philadelphia OIC, a workforce development nonprofit that impacts over 1,500 individuals annually. Now, before Philadelphia OIC, she was the CEO of the Hughes Group. And before that, she was the CEO of the fourth largest market in the American Red Cross for more than 6 years. I'm going to ask whoever just came in to just mute your line, please. Thank you. Welcome, Judge Renee Hughes. Thank you for being on today.
Malik, thank you so much for this opportunity. The mission of OIC is very simple, yet very powerful. Our mission is to eradicate poverty through education and job training. That is our sole mission. And as simply stated as that is, it is just that complex. So we provide basic education, high school diplomas, high school equivalency, digital literacy, life skills, and specific job training in a multitude of areas. People have known OIC recently for hospitality and tourism, but we're also very active in smart energy for the utilities that are coming forward. We are active and we are working now on environmental services. We are working on advanced manufacturing. We are working on many exciting opportunities for training our people. I want to say that we are skating to where the puck is.
Skating to where the puck is.
Exactly.
That is a great line and great mission statement, especially in these challenging times with a lot of topics and targets moving in the space. And so we're excited and we look forward to hearing from you. I'll go next to Andrea Custis. She is the president and CEO of the Urban League of Philadelphia. Andrea is a senior executive with over 30 years of sales, marketing, human capital, and operations experience for Fortune 50 marquee brands. It is a pleasure to have you, Andrea, on the panel this evening. Welcome.
So much. I'm sitting here and I have a beautiful view of the city. I can see Comcast and I can see IBC and Pico and others, and I'm looking at the rain. So hopefully everybody is safe, and thank you to everybody who took time out of their busy schedule, and everyone I think is even more busy these days. So we are a 103-year-old civil rights organization. We came about when it was the Great Migration, when former slaves were going north for a better future and to also help their families live better. So if you ask me the elevator speech, what do you do? I would say social justice and economic empowerment. That's our history that hasn't changed. And when you say social justice, it's speaking up and speaking out on issues like criminal justice, family wages, when it comes to women's issues. So when you look at that education, fair funding, so we do a lot on advocacy, and we do a lot on advocacy in Washington, D.C., we do, and also in Harrisburg, and also with City Council. Economic empowerment is all about lifting people out of poverty. And so we do it through 5 direct services. We can talk about them later. But of course, the first one is education. And I think for many of us, Malik, I'm looking at you, I'm looking at Judge Hughes, I'm looking at Chad. Many of you, your parents said to you the way to lift out of poverty, just the way to excel was education. And so all of you went and you did advanced education. So education is critical to us. We work with Dr. Height very closely. We also do it through workforce. I'm just going to say this word, jobs, jobs, jobs. Tell me how you move people out of poverty if they don't have jobs, right? So it's positions. The third area is housing, how many of us as Black folks began to build wealth. I know it was my family. You bought a house. You know, as soon as you took the car off, you were lucky to have a car and fortunate, but you and I know that for the most part, it depreciates. So if you make the right decision on a house, it's a house. And way back in the day, they didn't flip houses. They stayed in the same house and tried to pay it off. So housing is definitely a way that we build wealth. And then two other areas of direct service, entrepreneurship. Maybe we can talk about that later. I'm very concerned about small Black businesses in Philadelphia. Have a lot to say about it. It's the number one thing that I worry about right now. I'm very concerned about it. And the last area is health and wellness. We were not doing things at all, or not really, on health and wellness. And when I came 3 years ago, I looked and I came back to Philly. I had left for years and I went through North Philly in particular, and on every corner, like there is a dialysis center. I said, what is going on? So I began to do research and looked at area codes. And of course, we had the highest level of obesity, you know, heart disease and so on. So we're doing a lot around education. My daughter is a doctor and she reminds me every day, please stay out of my area. And I'm like, look, I don't have an MD after my name, but what I do know is I read, I'm well educated, I can do education to help our people. So we've come to a happy medium with that. Thank you.
We're definitely excited about your passion. We can hear it. And I'm looking forward to hearing some of your expertise and perspective on some of these truly important issues. Now, Dr. King says it best, you know, we are caught up in that web of inescapable mutuality. What happens to one happens to us all. That is the premise that I believe this brother deals with at the Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission. Chad Dion Lassiter is the executive director of the Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission. He is nationally recognized in the fields of American race relations and violence prevention among African American males. He's worked on race, peace, and poverty related issues in Africa, Canada, Haiti, Israel, and Norway, and he is called upon to serve as an expert and commentary for various media outlets and lectures worldwide. And so we're excited to have you as well, Chad Dion Lassiter. Welcome to the panel.
Thank you, Malik. I'm just humbled and honored to be here this evening with three individuals who I admire, with Brother Malik, and also with my former boss, Judge Hughes, who always pushed me to be better, to be excellent, to understand commitment to excellence, and not because Al Davis said it with the Oakland and Los Angeles Raiders. And then my big sister of the past, past 2 years, in Andrea. And so I'm just humbled and honored this evening. The PHRC has been around since 1955. We're the top civil rights enforcing agency in the Commonwealth. So if anyone is discriminated against because of unlawful discrimination, they can file a complaint with regards to us. The ultimate goal is that we have law enforcement powers. We're guided by the Pennsylvania Human Relations Act. People should be able to live and work free of discrimination in the Commonwealth. And so we do a lot of work in the space of fair housing, a lot of work in the space of discrimination with regards to employment. We want everyone to recognize that you don't have to be discriminated against, and there is a recourse, and you can file a complaint. We have 3 regional offices, one in Pittsburgh, one in Harrisburg, one here in Philadelphia. I also want to note that the Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission, we trend on every side of the color line, every side of the gender line. So if it's poor whites in rural PA that are being discriminated against because of housing, we will be there. LGBT, transphobia, homophobia, we're going to be there and have been there. Situations like Tree of Life, we partner with our Jewish colleagues around vicarious traumatization. The anthology of police brutality with some police officers, we're there as well. The unique thing is that we have an opportunity, because we engage in civil rights, moving that paradigm from civil rights to human rights, to recognize the humanity of all individuals, and to try to create what Martin Luther King and Rabbi Abraham Yeshua Heschel called the beloved community, which means that it's not a community where you want everyone to reach consensus. It's a community where you invite in the white nationalists. You invite in the white supremacist. You invite in the atheist, the agnostic, the Muslim, the Christian, the LGBT community, all for a dialogue that can lead us to a place where we might not agree with one another, but it doesn't have to be with hatred and vitriol, and it's not a hierarchy of superiority, marginalization of other populations, and rendering them non-person, non-entity in our democracy. So we do a whole lot of other things. With all three of these organizations, you most certainly can go to our website so that you can get the intricacies of everything that we do. Thank you.
Thank you. And so we'll dig deep into the topics. Andrea, you brought out a key point about health. We all know health is wealth. Without that, we cannot even begin the process to accumulate the assets to really impact our community and raise the tide. Councilwoman Catherine Gilmore Richardson just posted a few days ago stats concerning the COVID hospitalizations by race. Obviously, African Americans, Black people, and residents outnumbered those of all other races and ethnicities combined. The top zip codes for COVID-19 hospitalizations, according to the Philadelphia Department of Health, include 19140, Hunting Park, Tioga, and Nicetown. 19143, King Cecil. 19139, West Philadelphia, Mill Creek, and Dunlap. 19131, Winfield, West Park, and Overbrook. And 19120, Olney and Feltonville. Obviously, all of those neighborhoods have a significant portion of African-American individuals in the space. And so as we deal with this challenging and complex time, what should be our collective response? Obviously, there are some that feel that the administration is making the wrong decisions as it relates to African Americans specifically. What cannot be refuted is that we are all impacted, but African Americans the most. How do we deal with this triage moment, knowing that COVID has impacted not just our economics personally, but our small business community and commercial corridors as well? Andrea, I'll start with you.
Malik, your stats and everything you said, it's spot on. So let me pause and let me give it like this. We knew coming into it that African Americans do not have access to health care. We do not. You see the Affordable Care Act. I'll give you just a small little notation over here, and I want to come back. I was out recently in West Philadelphia. I was sweeping streets with some of my peers in the Urban League. And one of the sisters came up to me and she was angry and she started yelling at me. And I said, "What's wrong?" She said, "I don't have a doctor. You do commercials. You know, it's not the Urban League, but we do commercials here in this city that says drive up, get tested, and so on." She said, "What am I going to drive up? Borrow somebody's scooter, their bicycle? I don't have a doctor. Give me a doctor's name so I can call." So here's where we are, how we get there, and what we need to do. We got there because African Americans are coming into this with preconditions, right? We're coming in with the highest level of heart disease. We're coming in with high levels of cholesterol. We're coming in here with obesity. We're coming here with pulmonary issues. We have all of the preconditions, right? It's like a perfect storm. We have all of those. You can do it by zip code and compare it to Caucasian zip codes. Number two, because of the workforce, we are in all of those frontline jobs. Go look, who's driving the buses? Who's at CVS? Who's at the food markets, right? So we don't have the luxury of staying home and working from home. We are in the frontline positions, right? And then thirdly, as I said already, we don't have access to health care, right? We do not. And then the fourth piece is that when you look at the economic conditions, go into the homes. I've been into the homes. I stay into the homes. You have several generations, and because money is an issue, you have all kinds of conditions in a home that is not a good thing. It's like a perfect storm. I went into a woman's home in North Philly, and I worked with one of my partners on the board, Lowe's, and we cleaned and fixed some of the homes. She has been in a home that had a fire for the last 8 years. I cannot tell you like what she was breathing in and what that looked like. So that's the perfect condition. Now, what should we be doing? We should all be screaming. I was on a town hall meeting with Senator Hughes, and there were a lot of doctors on it. And I said, okay, it was a whole bunch of doctors on it. And there was one in particular, an African doctor from University of Penn, and I thought he said it well. All of us should be screaming, hollering, and demanding that it is not okay that there's a disparate impact on Black folks dying more so than any other ethnicity. It's a fact. The cases as well as death. He said, we're all sitting by saying, okay, another Black person died. Okay, another Black person died. He said, all of us should be screaming and demanding justice. So there's one. Our voices should be heard. Number two, I got immediately involved, and I hope she's looking at this, with Dr. Stanford. She took the lead on the Black Doctors Consortium for COVID-19. She took the lead. She sat at home as a pediatric surgeon and said, it's not okay that my people are not getting tested. She got on the phone, she called girlfriends, and all of them began to go into the poorest Black communities, and they were testing for COVID. So I immediately called her and I said, I want to partner. I want to get involved. And so a couple things that we did is I was able to give her a little bit of money to pay for a couple of times when she's going out there testing. I want you to think about how much money. The kits are $100. And then in addition to that, you got to have porta potties. You got to feed your volunteers. There is a lot of cost in that. They were all doing that themselves. I know many of us made sure our voices were heard in the city. And I think she finally got, it was either 1.2 or 1.3 million. Like she said other day on a town hall with Dr. Glasgow, head of Jefferson Hospital. It's the start. It's not all the money that she needs. So we need to get involved and make sure we are volunteering and being a part of all those who are testing and doing everything. We need to be shouting and screaming in every area we can, especially in Washington, D.C., when it comes to affordable care and access for Black folks. And so we just need to get involved. No matter what area you do, all is welcome. And we are all a part of that. I'm not one with an MD, but I raised my hand and I went out there and we started volunteering and doing other things that we could to make a difference.
I think you're spot on with that. Advocacy matters, raising our voices matters, not just enough to post it and circulate memes on Facebook, but we have to be very active speaking with our legislature and making sure that our medical community has some of the resources that they need. Judge Hughes, the Turnpike, just permanently as a result of COVID, and some will say, you know, it could have potentially been in the works prior to, but COVID was used as a reason to eliminate 500 collectors. And so jobs that we knew existed, jobs that we believed were fail-safe jobs are now being removed as a result of COVID. As you prepare our workforce for this new reality, what are some of the industries that we should remain focused on? What are some of the industries, obviously, that education should lean towards in adjusting for this new reality? And for those who are looking to change as a result of a layoff or some other happenstance as a result of COVID, where should our eyes be focused to ensure that we have longevity in the community?
Thank you, Malik. It's a perfect question. It's a question I've been working on for months since I joined OIC. If I could just ask you to indulge me for 1 second. When Andrea says scream, can I just translate that really quickly? Because I want everybody to leave here with a list of really doable actions. First, I want you to start at home. Everybody in your home needs to be wearing a mask. They need to isolate as much as they can. We are essential frontline workers, so that's not always real, but wearing a mask does help. Keeping social distancing does help. And when screaming, I want to be real clear, because Malik, I got your message that you wanted us to be straight with the people tonight, okay? From the day, which would be January 20th, 2017, there has been nothing but a concerted effort to eliminate Obamacare. So while, yes, I want you to advocate in DC, I also want you to be real about what it is we do here at home. And there is a consortium of hospitals here at home, along with the Black doctors that Andrea talked about earlier, where we can, combined with our insurance companies, Independence Health Group, with Independence Blue Cross, Bear Health Caritas, Cigna, and I can go on. But we need to have the advocacy on the ground where it can make a difference. Just like the Voting Rights Act has been sitting on Mitch McConnell's desk for 250 days, the Obama are going on at a raging level. So you need to do those things, but you need to look at a strategy at home that moves the needle for our people at home. So let's talk about these essential jobs and jobs that are disappearing. Talk about letting 500 people go. The future of work tells us that anything that can be automated will be automated. The very first thing that all of us have to do is ensure that our people are digitally literate. When I was growing up, it was like, you have to go to college, you have to go to college, right?
Yeah.
When I was growing up, a high school diploma was insufficient. Today, a high school diploma is your first step. It's a high school diploma, a high school equivalency, digital literacy. It is critical. So when you are, to use Andrea's term, which I love, screaming, or to use Malik's term, advocating, one of the things that we have to advocate for is that internet access has to be a utility. It can no longer be a treat for the privileged. Internet access is essential to educating our children and for us finding jobs. Where is the skate puck? Where is the puck skating to now, pushing to now? Jobs in this area are moving toward advanced manufacturing. So if you look at the employers in the region, we have an extraordinary compilation of pharmaceuticals. We have an extraordinary compilation of defense manufacturers, Boeing, Lockheed, companies that are doing very sophisticated manufacturing, Leonardo. We have to be moving toward that arena, because the 500 people who lost their jobs on the turnpike, if they are not digitally literate, they won't move into new arenas. So I want to break our region up into 4 areas. And Malik, I know you got to watch the time. You try to be fast, but in looking at our area, so biomedicals and advanced manufacturing is one area. We spent 30 years working to become a destination city. We are a World Heritage City. We've invested so much money and time in building hotels, restaurants, and all the things related to tourism. We don't have the luxury of letting them fail. But our responsibility today in this moment when we can recraft the world is to say, while I may enter your hotel in environmental services, we have the opportunity now to demand career pathways within the hospitality and tourism industry. So you walk in the door and can move through the ranks. That's one of the things that we can work on with the power of our voice. What's the power of our voice? It is the $29 trillion that we spend on chicken wings and Jack Daniels. I want you to spend it differently. I want you to spend it so that we have a difference. So it's the biomedical arena, it's hospitality and tourism, and it's eds and meds. Eds drive so much in terms of opportunities for small businesses. If you think about the procurement supply chain, what the universities are purchasing, huge opportunity for our businesses to get contracts. I'm looking at smart energy. My team is very, very focused on smart energy because that's another sector where the jobs of the future will be. It will no longer be in gas and coal. It will be moving forward. And nuclear, people don't want to hear that, but that's a reality. It will be nuclear, it will be solar, it will be in alternative energy sources, wind. And those are the places that we need to start looking. But to leave here tonight with things that you can do, ensure that every member of your network, if they don't have a high school diploma, then they reach out to my catchphrase, and a lot of people on this call have heard it: for a better tomorrow, call OIC today, because you need a high school diploma or a high school equivalency, and you have to be digitally literate to even get in the game.
So as you talked about the digital divide, I hold this up not to date myself, but to remind each and every one of you who have a few years on you, just how quick technology will pass us by. If you were focused on being an end user and not a programmer, not a content creator, you will be just as stuck as this sidekick too. And so you are absolutely spot on, Judge Hughes, and we thank you for that. Chad, the Human Relations Commission has such a huge task to bring us all together in the midst of prioritizing ideas, those who are driving their agendas for their race and their communities based on issues, and the misunderstanding that occurs in this space. Legislatively, there is an advocacy effort that should happen. What should we be looking for as a community as it relates to leadership in the legislative space, and what should we demand as part of the agenda moving forward in this COVID environment?
Yeah, great question. I think the first thing that we should be looking for is more than just lip service. We're at a pivotal moment where we know that there's the coronavirus and then there's the virus of hate. But the virus of hate has always existed. It's part and parcel of American democracy. So we need our leaders to not only just put forward lip service, but we need that narrative to be a narrative in which we're really doing something as it relates to hate crimes, ethnic intimidation. There's a lot of bills that are there right now that are looking at going after those individuals who are engaged in forms of hatred. We know where the white supremacist groups are. Pennsylvania is number 8 in the country among hate groups assembling. So we need to have laws on the books that really will send messages to those individuals who engage in forms of hatred. So the police bill, for instance, it's important that we put forward that bill, and that bill did get passed with regards to the 2 most recent bills that the governor signed. But we've long known that chokeholds should have been outlawed. We've long known that there should have been a national repository that when an indifferent police officer left Philadelphia, they couldn't get a job in Minneapolis. When they got fired from Minneapolis, they couldn't get a job in Ferguson. I think one of the things when you're talking about leadership right now in this moment that we find ourselves in, it's a challenge, all right? So when you look at PHRC, we had coronavirus, we had individuals saying that it was, the Chinese flu or the Chinese virus, excuse me. And it wasn't just the president. We heard it in parts of Philadelphia, which is the epicenter of the Asian American Pacific Islander community. We also got reports of the defacing of property, physical attacks on the community. And so as we're trending with that, we had the transphobia centered around Dr. Levine. As we're dealing with that, we now have the Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor. We also have the George Floyd. And then we've already had all of this racial animus that had existed, but then there's the least of it all is the lack of a conversation around white violence and white racism. So what I want for our legislators to do is to have a frank conversation. And that conversation starts with race dialogue, but that also leads to policy change. So take, for instance, our agency. We have a complement of 86. How can we conceivably deal with anti-Semitism, the anthology of police brutality, sexual coercion along the indices of housing, discrimination in public accommodations, discrimination in the space of commercial property? We know that COVID-19 is going to bring more complaints as it relates to housing discrimination. We also just got a complaint most recently, Malik, and viewing audience of LGBT individuals going into a convenience store with a mask on with the LGBT colors, and we're discriminated against. We're told to get out. You can't do this with 86 people. If we're going to be committed to addressing systemic and structural oppression, if we're going to be committed to what we call social justice, it has to move from a theoretical where everyone now is becoming awoke at the moment that we find ourselves in. Over in faraway places, whether it's Brussels, Belgium, folk are talking about we have to do something about white supremacy. We've always had to do something about white supremacy. The first 12 presidents of the United States owned slaves. The birth certificate of America, as it reads in theory, equality, justice, liberty for all, really is about tyranny, falsehoods, pillars of contradictions, 401 years of oppression, not an indictment against white people, but a system of white supremacy. So what I need to see happen is more money in my budget to do the work that we're called upon to do to make the Commonwealth safe, not just for people who look like us, but for everyone in the Commonwealth, all forms of xenophobia, all forms of prejudice and bigotry. And I think also one of the things that's radical in a lot of ways, Malik, is I'm not certain, because I have no data right now, has the state legislation ever had anti-racism training for themselves? My organization, we had the Anti-Defamation League come in and train us on unconscious bias.
Yeah.
Chad Dion Lassiter, how does he deal with toxic masculinity? His male bravado, his isms, and things of that nature. And so I think it's very important for us to look at funding for the Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission. We need to also get out into the public. So what our state legislators can do is partner with our director of enforcement, of policy and intergovernmental affairs, so that we can put in their newsletters how to file a complaint, what discrimination looks like, so that people don't have to exist in a space, lastly, around the social vulnerabilities that Andrea and Dr. Judge Hughes was talking about. That social vulnerability leads Asian American Pacific Islanders, because of a cultural phenomenon, not to want to come and file a complaint. It leads Africans and Caribbeans and immigrants to say, I'm being brutalized by the police, I'm being oppressed by people in my community or my employer, but I'm not going to say anything. And I understand the social vulnerability. So they can help us with funding 35 to 40 new positions at the Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission. We can be serious about what do we mean when we say racial equity in a holistic standpoint. And lastly, we can be realists. We're not going to dismantle the system of white supremacy. It's as old as empire is, but every day we should be prisoners of hope to get up and try to dismantle it and lend our lives to it, to use our lives as a form of alleviating the issue.
I appreciate that response. So Andrea and Judge Hughes, if you will indulge me in a minute, I will just take 60 seconds from each of you to just get your feedback on this one particular point, and then to chat out in with you on this. Colorado passed a sweeping police reform bill in June. One of the first states that will allow police officers to be financially responsible for civil misconduct. Now, Governor Jared Polis said that based on this bill, all local and state police officers must wear body cams by 2023. Body camera footage must be made public. Chokeholds are prohibited. Shooting at fleeing suspects is prohibited. Deadly force can only be used if a person's life is in imminent danger. Police must report every instance in which they stop someone who they suspect of a crime. They must also include that person's race, gender, and ethnicity. They have to report each other for wrongdoing, and officers can be held personally liable for damages up to $25,000 if they're found guilty violating an individual's civil rights. Obviously, I honor and respect your expertise in the industry, but I'd love to hear your hearts, Andrea and Judge Renee Hughes, around this kind of legislation and what we can do to lead our community towards this real action, not just in Pennsylvania, but across the region.
So, Malik, I have an opportunity because there are 90 affiliates in the United States of America under Mark Morial, to hear from all my peers, those that are dealing with Breonna Taylor, those that are dealing with George Floyd, all of it, right? So I get to hear all of it, plus other stories that you don't get to hear in Philadelphia that are happening, but they don't make the paper, and they're just as serious as those. Mm-hmm. So I'm a big believer in the plan that that President Obama and also Holder put in that was working, and there's data to support it. So I'm 100% for body cams, as you just mentioned, on an individual, but also in the car. I am also very much opposed, and I'm on the advisory committee here in Philadelphia with Commissioner Outlaw and the mayor. There's a group of us, and they already said, absolutely abolish the chokeholds. That's like craziness. So they've agreed with that. The other piece is similar to what you said. When President Obama was there, every incident that was noteworthy that was happening had to be reported into Washington, D.C. We're not doing that across the United States. That info needs to go into a central point in Washington, D.C. Coming back here to Philadelphia, we have a dysfunctional, I believe, my words, arbitration system. Now, there are probably others that would say that's not true. I've asked this question: why are the arbitrators coming out of the central area, Harrisburg, and why are they predominantly, if not all, white males? I don't understand it. Our arbitration system needs to be looked at and needs to be reviewed. For those supervisors who do take and put people on performance improvement plans, and those that have said you've got to go, that they fire those individuals, what happens is the arbitrator comes in, overturns that. So those individuals who are out there for a year, you had a vacation and you get your money back. There has to be a look at our arbitration system here in Philadelphia. I'm also very much in support of community involvement and what we're doing and how we're doing. We need to be transparent. That information needs to be shared. And the community, whoever you select, those individuals need to have input into what is going on, how we should be doing it, and what we're doing. So those are just a few things. So I applaud the issues and the things that you raised, that they said, look, everybody's got to be accountable, and here's what we're going to do in Colorado. So I am 100% supportive of it.
Wonderful to hear your thoughts. Judge Renee Hughes, our workforce, those that are receiving living wage and slightly above, are really impacted by some of those situations that Colorado has dealt with on the current legislation. And we know, quite frankly, while violence and issues of police misconduct can happen to anyone, it's often those who cannot, what I call, file and fight, that suffer the most. And so as we talk to our workforce, as we prepare them for this COVID reality, and with Colorado's legislation in mind, what are some of your thoughts about what we need to do here in the region?
So there's several things, and I really appreciate the question. I am a strong believer in the selection criteria. The selection criteria needs to be changed. Andrea mentioned a moment ago the Obama Holder Task Force. It was actually chaired by Charles Ramsey, who used to be our police commissioner. And one of the things that he tried to achieve in Philadelphia and did not, unfortunately, did not come to fruition, was that in order to be a cop, you had to at least have an associate's degree, at least have associate's degree. And he wanted you to be at least 21 years old. He preferred a college degree. And I know, and some people may say that also, that sounds elitist, but the reality is today at 18 years old, you can go to the academy. So we put a Glock and a badge in the hands of an 18-year-old. Maturity does not occur fully until 26. So many of the people that we're putting on the street as frontline officers don't have the judgment or wherewithal. It is just a neurological fact. And so I think we need to change the selection criteria. The way the process currently works is that you get your psychological evaluation at the end. We need to start screening out people who have these inherent biases, the inability to adapt quickly, who don't exercise good judgment. We need to screen them out in the beginning. The next step that we have to go toward is training. And the things that I'm identifying now are things that we can do immediately in Philadelphia. I own the reality of Harrisburg. We can move very little in Harrisburg until we flip the Senate. Just like in DC, we've got to flip the Senate. We're not there yet. So let's talk about what we can do at home while we're battling to put better representation in Harrisburg. So we can change the local selection criteria. We can change the training. And the training right now doesn't include inclusion and respect for diversity. It just doesn't. There was a time when both Ramsey, when Willie Johnson and Ramsey, and I'm skipping one.
Sylvester Johnson.
Sylvester Johnson.
Sylvester Johnson, Willie Williams, Sylvester Johnson, they all had a vision of community policing. And I know that some people are probably going to push back on me, but community policing as designed by Willie Williams meant that you had a relationship in the community. The reality shows us, and I still teach criminal justice and punishment, the data shows us that in white neighborhoods, they look at a child, and I say child because they tend to be teenagers in early 20s, and they say, oh, I know your daddy, I know your grandmother, I go to church with your uncle, let me take you home, because they're gonna take care of you. But in our community, because they don't know us and they don't respect us, you're already viewed as a problem. So having that relationship in the community is vital. And we control the definition of community policing, how people come in our community. Andrea mentioned arbitration. I'm on part of the reconciliation task force, and we have already started to identify those elements of the arbitration process that we can begin to renegotiate with FOP. But I also want to talk about police oversight. For the last 3 mayors, we have attempted to create a police oversight board, and it has been absolutely feckless. It has had no teeth, no staff, no budget, could not hold anyone accountable, had no input into arbitration, nor did it have any input into the contracts. We've got, in those cities that have real police oversight boards, not advisory, police oversight boards, then the body cam footage has meaning because it's going someplace where it's going to be looked at. The protocols, the processes, the training, they all have meaning. So when we talk about our young people and what can we do to train our workforce, look, I'm a mom and I've had the talk. And although my grandson is only 4, I worry about when we're going to have the talk with my grandson.
Wow.
About what to do. Yes, and I think about that now. My son called me after George Floyd died and said, I don't know how I'm going to explain this to him. I don't know how, and he doesn't have to be explained at 4, but that's my son thinking forward about the reality of being a Black man in America and how you raise a Black man in America. And people don't want to hear this, but I want to live to fight another day. So yes, I want to ban chokeholds and I want to do all those things, but I want to teach our children how to engage with law enforcement in such a way that they get to come home and we get to live to fight another day. Mm. That's what I want for our children. So
absolutely. I think all of our parents and those who...
Can I just give one thing? Because I just love what Renee just said about training and a number of things. And I just want to add one thing. If we look at that Starbucks situation, if we had taught our officers how to do a better job of de-escalating, that would have not gone to where it was. They would have called those 2 young men out and said, what's going on? Even the white folks are in here taking it. They're calling saying they did anything. Why then is the woman calling? Like, what's going on? We missed that opportunity. And I said that to Commissioner Ross on national TV. I said, we're lucky to have him. We're fortunate. I feel like he did a lot of good things. But I said, it's what Renee said. It's training, you're doing that military training, and what you are not doing a good job is trying to figure out how do you de-escalate a situation so it never gets to where it possibly can. And so I pray and hope that we do some training that's a little bit different, just like she said, you know, the training on how we all have biases and what do you do with this, unconscious biases, whatever it is, that we work with that, but we really need to learn how to do a better job in de-escalation.
And Malik, can do this. We can do this. I just want to share this with you really, really quickly. We can do this. We took a project from Boston. When I was on the bench, I went to Boston and we looked at a program in which we had the community leaders of all stripes working with law enforcement. We brought that model back to Philadelphia. It was welcome. You remember the model where we were trying to train officers on how to be in the community, to know the leaders, to know the people, and how to de-escalate a situation. Politics shifted on us. Let's just be real. Politics shifted on us. And so I am political. For those of you who know me, you know I am political to my core.
Yes, you are.
I am political to my core because I believe that if you don't vote, you empower these folks to do this stuff to us. So you need to vote. You need to vote at every single election, and God knows you need to vote in November. But the reason you need to vote is because it's the mayor who picks the police chief. It's the mayor who determines whether we're going to have a civilian police oversight board. It's the mayor who's going to back up the police chief who says, I am only going to hire people who have been psychologically screened, who are trained, and who are continually trained on proper engagement with the community. We control that.
Yeah.
We control the second floor of City Hall.
Mm-hmm. I think you bring up some amazing points. Chad, I have a tie on for the Zoom, but I'm gonna take the tie off my tongue so I can speak a little freely with this comment. Truth is, obviously sensitivity training has not worked. White supremacy and, this racial divide has been able to continue through our police force and quite frankly, run rampant. We saw it best in Fishtown, where we had protesters celebrated for going against those who were speaking on Black Lives Matters. We had, those who were elevated in the police force actually thank those individuals for bringing out crowbars and bats to meet peaceful protesters as they talked about Black Lives Matters. So there's a clear issue here. What I also see very clearly, and I think Andrea or maybe Judge Hughes spoke on this, is that we don't have therapists of color to deal with the issues of the day inside of the force. How do we address some of those issues and support minority officers who don't have the support when they speak out, knowing that their jobs are at stake, knowing that their shifts and promotions are at stake the moment that they speak out about some of these injustices within the badge?
Really great question, Malik. And I just wanted to say, for the purposes of time constraint, we can go past 8 o'clock. We have the Zoom scheduled to 9. We're appreciative of the viewing audience. I think that's a great question. As you know, Brother Darren Tolliver, Dr. Walter Palmer, and myself in 2003, we launched the Black Men at Penn School of Social Work Incorporated, the first group of any kind on any Ivy League campus that was all Black male social workers with masters in social work and PhDs. Our work for the past 17 years has been centered on doing anti-racism training in our public, our suburban, our rural schools and organizations. I don't think police departments need diversity training. They need anti-racism training. Anti-racism training gets to the underpinnings and the framework of white ideology that's centered around how they view us as Black people. Take Dylan Roof, for example, Ted Bundy, Timothy McVeigh, David Koresh, even here in Philadelphia, Gary Heidnick. All of these individuals and more engaged in atrocities, but yet they were taken alive. When you look at Eric Garner said to the cop, I wasn't selling to Lucy. The cop said, you were. Eric Garner said, I wasn't. He gets a chokehold applied, he dies. Tamir Rice, it's not explicit or implicit bias that they rolled up on Tamir Rice and saw a 12-year-old and thought he was 21. That's white supremacist ideology. When you look at a film like Birth of a Nation and you tie that into the film by Ava 13th and all types of other things in between, you understand that Timothy McVeigh can blow up the Oklahoma Federal Building and we don't put white males with blue eyes, blonde hair, and buzz cuts in the service. We don't put them under surveillance. But the
Right.
black body, your body, my body, Darren's body, Andrea's body, Judge Hughes' body, say their name, Tasha McKenna, say their name, Breonna Taylor. Our bodies are always under suspicion. It's always under surveillance. And that's because we move from the overseer on the plantation to the very moment we have with officers. We continue to talk about the talk. And my mother gave my brother, God rest his soul, my mother gave me the talk. My father gave us the talk. But there needs to be another talk. And that talk should be to these officers that when you approach our vehicles, see our humanity. We are in fact human. Don't come to the context with your racism. It's not just a bias, it's a racism. In the city of Philadelphia, if my black brothers and sisters that I grew up with at 4433 North 9th Street in Hunting Park, if we showed up to any place demanding the opening of the government, you and I, Malik, registered to carry with a license, they would shut us down. And that's the problem that I see here in Philadelphia. It has long had a storied history of peculiar arrogance, white peculiar arrogance that will craft a statue of Rocky, who was fictitious, and not have a statue until recently of Joe Frazier. And so when we're looking at the way we allow white males to be championed with their vigilantism, and then you have peaceful demonstration with black and brown and white people on every side of the color line, gender line, we end up in this space. So the counseling component is something that we propose, and Brother Darren is on here tonight. We propose that to the school district, and we propose that to the prisons, and we also propose it to the police department. The only people that took us up on it was the school district and the prisons. I was on the board of trustees for 8 years with the Philadelphia prison system under Mayor Nutter. The reason why it was important for the police department is all those things that Andrea and Judge Hughes are talking about. A biopsychosocial assessment because of the trauma, with all due respect. There are officers who leave their homes, and because of fear of calamity, they put their lives on the line so that we can live. They respond to some conditions that we as social workers, we know of. I've been with police officers where we've gone into places like Newark and Camden and Trenton and Philadelphia, and you open up the drawer and the fetus is laying in the drawer dead. They've gone into houses where the quilt served as the door during wintertime, and everybody, not painting a picture of pathology, was high on crack. So after they see that, they get a call and they have to go to another scene, and they have to go to another scene. Who is working with them on the psychological functioning of what they're going through? And then they're human beings as well. Their children are faced with challenges. So we need to work on how to cope, one way of coping adaptively. We need to also look at psychological, biopsychosocial evals that are quarterly, and the training needs to be anti-racism training so that we can deal with what the problem is, white supremacy. How can you take Dylan Roof alive? And you should have, but you certainly should have not killed George Floyd. And when he had his knee on the neck of George Floyd, he got satisfaction out of that. He was having a physical orgasm, and he was not doing it because of an implicit bias. He was doing it because of white supremacist ideology that looks at us, looks at you, Malik, looks at black males and black females, sees us as non-person and non-entity. I'm Abdullah Diallo. I'm not an immigrant. I'm a Senegalese. Here's my papers. You shoot him 41 times? 41 times. But the young man who goes into the movie theater in Aurora, Colorado, dresses up like the Joker, shoots up the movie theater, he was stressed out because he wasn't certain if he was going to be able to defend his PhD. Nah, we got to speak back to those things. And so we should be calling for anti-racism training of every police department. Lastly, in the community, police and community relations. It's more than you coming shooting a basket with us, jumping rope, doing hopscotch, pork on your fork, swine on your mind. It's more than a cookout. It's you, like Judge Hughes said, understanding who we are. See us for the beauty of who we are. And yes, we do have problems, but we are not a problem people. The problem in our democracy, and we're afraid to continue to talk about the racial elephants in the room, is white supremacy, it's institutional racism, prejudice plus power, and our white colleagues who are in solidarity, not allyship, in solidarity with us, they too are noticed that that's the problem. And we have to make sure that we do anti-racism training in our schools and our organizations. Diversity for me is touchy-feely. Diversity for me, Malik and others, is kumbaya, to throw through the tulips, we shall overcome. But anti-racism training gets us to those points where we understand that it's the structural systems that dehumanize and degrade people, and that's not an indictment against our white colleagues. It's part and parcel of American democracy, and you have just a amount of whites who are out there holding signs. When Andrea and I were out there, her organization led a fathers rally with Mark Mariel, Congressman Evans, Senator Vince Hughes. We had white progressive young people holding signs saying Black Lives Matter too. No justice, no peace, no racist police. So I don't get seduced by the media that wants me to think that there are no, excuse my language, dope ass white people out there. I know a bunch of dope ass white people all around the Commonwealth who are fighting for justice on behalf of African Americans at this pivotal point in time, and they'll do the same for LGBT, Asian American Pacific Islanders, Latinos, Native American, Indigenous, and I think at the end of the day, it's really about counseling. The mere fact, Malik, that we're having this and the response to that I'm giving you is because I'm traumatized. Mm-hmm. I live this body. I have to compartmentalize this. If I'm not calling Judge Hughes, I'm calling Andrea. If I'm not calling Andrea, I'm calling my fiance. And I'm blessed because you and I are back connected in this space. And you already know, in full disclosure, my psychologist, Dr. Marquita Williams, I call her 2 o'clock in the morning to deal with the trauma of all of this. We don't have to look at it on television. We can turn off that TV because that's a vicarious traumatization. And then when we talk passionately like this, people will say, wow, he's really angry. I ain't never killed a white person, a black person, or anybody in my life. But I've been the victim of police brutality on several occasions in the city of Philadelphia in 8th grade. But we didn't know to look at the person's badge number. So when I came home with a bloody mouth, my mom and dad said, who did that? I said, 2 white officers. My dad said, did you get their names? We weren't trained to understand that was Fitzpatrick or Lloyd or Smith. We just, hey, back during that time, you just got beat up. You came back home and you went to Sunday school the following Sunday.
Yeah. No, you're spot on, and it's clear that there's passion around this topic. I'm also looking at the chat, and thank you to the audience for adding input. If you don't mind, panelists, I'm going to sit here for another 5 to 10 minutes because I want to get continued feedback from here and also inject some of the comments from the panel or from the chat. But then we'll go into entrepreneurship. And then we'll also go into education, which we do believe those two facets are crucial to discuss here. So Nancy Campbell says, MLK, legislation can't make you love me, but it can stop you from lynching me. We've actually seen that challenged even in recent times. There's legislation around some of the issues of the day, yet we watched some of that white supremacy even override some of the opportunities to prosecute individuals properly. Tasha Julius says voting polls are being severely decreased due to COVID, and the president is trying to get rid of those mail-in ballots. What do we do to get new volunteers to the polls and get the word out? Obviously, your vote is your voice as we talk about advocacy and getting the right people in office. Monica Ojo says the system needs the cultural shift. Judge Hughes, Floyd was killed by the system and not Derek Chauvin. This guy should have been off the force years ago. I know you wanted to jump in as you heard Chad speaking, and so I'll throw this to you.
Okay, so a couple of things. Number one, with respect to Nancy, I don't want the law to work against me, okay? So I do believe in the law, and I do believe in crafting laws that give us the best opportunity. To that end, when we were talking a moment ago about the police force and Chad's emotion and ending racism, there is something that, because I'm real big on giving you things that you can control yourself. When a black person or brown person chooses to be a cop, then let's not alienate them. Let's not somehow make them feel that they're a traitor to our community, because that's wrong. And we know that happens. And we know that we don't often help them do what they need to do to protect us. And I'm very clear about this. I am very clear about how I stood in front of City Hall crying over the death of an 8-year-old who was shot on the school steps by a drug dealer trying to shoot another drug dealer. And I'm talking to my favorite detective and I'm said, you got to get this guy. You got to bring this case in. And the detective responded and said, we know who it is, they just won't give us any evidence. So I'm about community responsibility. I hold us accountable. So when there are good cops, you need to support them and do your part too. Tasha mentioned voting. COVID is a beast, and there are a lot of people who are afraid to work the polls. One of the solutions that I heard that was absolutely brilliant, and we can do it here in Philadelphia, is that in Louisville, they took the arena where they play ball, and they put all the polling places in the arena. They needed people. Now, if you think about where we live, if we were to use the arena where the Sixers play ball, the name changes name so many times, I don't know the name of it anymore, but y'all know which one I'm talking about. What is it now? The Spectrum?
Wells Fargo?
Go to Wells Fargo.
Whichever bank owns it today, okay? The point being where the Sixers play ball, if we put all the polling places in there, public transportation goes there, free parking is down there, we would be able to ensure that our people could get to the polls and vote in November. That is a decision of the mayor. And I'm sick of Jeffrey Lloyd, and I'm sick of all the people who own those arenas. We can hold them accountable and set that up. So yes, we can do something about COVID and its impact on our voting. Chad mentioned something called 13th. 13th is a documentary. Everybody over the age of 5 ought to watch 13th. It's Ava DuVernay, and it traces the history of the criminalization of African Americans in this country. It is entertaining, it is brilliant, it is intellectually challenging, and it does call us to account for our behavior and how we've allowed the system to do this to us. So I strongly encourage you to take some time and watch 13th. It is well worth your time. I'm not going to back down from the fact that officers need to be trained, need to be have ongoing training. And I'm not going to back down from the fact that officers need to be in the community in a meaningful way so that we can hold them accountable and so that they know who we are. I encourage people to become lawyers, to become law officers, to become firefighters, to become EMTs, because when we control the system, we live much better.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Andrea, I'll leave you to close this portion of the town hall. What are your thoughts? I know you've been waiting patiently as Chad passionately discussed his personal perspective on it, and Judge Hughes talked about solutions and opportunities that we can do that are city-based, local, understanding that all politics are local and change begins locally. What are your thoughts around dealing with some of these issues?
I'm going to pass on that because I think that Chad, I just sit here and I'm like, don't stop talking. I forget where I am and I'm immersed in everything that he says. And I thought he was so transparent. I thought he was so truthful and very revealing of what he shared with all of us. He did not have to share it. And I think, I believe that Judge Hughes just brought it home and absolutely deal with this. So I think both of them have absolutely done a beautiful job. And I won't even add to their comments from both of them. Beautifully, beautifully said.
We appreciate it, and also appreciate your support of those comments. The time is now 8:05 Eastern Standard Time. If we're going to 9 p.m., thank you so much for joining us on this Zoom call, this virtual town hall called Leading in Challenging and Complex Times. Let's talk about entrepreneurship. National Geographic, July 17th, posted an article that it was titled, "More than Half of Black-Owned Businesses May Not Survive COVID-19. Inside of that article, one report found that 41% of Black-owned businesses have been shuttered by COVID-19, compared to just 17% of white-owned businesses. Now, Harold Epps, a familiar name and face for us in the Philadelphia community, was quoted in that article saying, after 90 days without positive cash flow, you will feel a lot of pain. It doesn't matter if you're a barber, beauty supply store, food provider, or any other retail outlet. Many are challenged by cash flow on a good day. And over the last 90 days, it's been non-existent. That will result in 1 out of every 2 businesses not returning. Andre, I'm going to throw this to you. How do we deal with this reality that COVID is not only taking lives, but taking the life out of businesses in our commercial corridors, allowing for gentrification to happen in the space Um, we're talking about anchor businesses that have served our communities for years, now leaving out for potential fast food businesses, other businesses that we fought long and hard to make sure that they did not oversaturate our corridor. We're now susceptible. How do we handle this? How do we deal with it? How do we legislate? How do we come with maybe even cooperative economics to ensure that we prop up our businesses during these times?
Right. Malik, I have had, I can't even describe, I just had one today, a conversation with TD Bank, with Coffee, who's on the board, and Damien, and some other people. I have had this conversation about small business over and over. I said in the beginning, the number one area that I feel is so challenging and scary to me when I look at that we do workforce where I am, we do housing, we do all of these things, but the one that is least supported in terms of funding is small business. Now, I'm going to be really clear. So let me admit to a couple of things. You have we have an entrepreneurship center, right? 11, 12 years old. And we were able to, Keith Ellison, the director, was able to do a lot of education around applying for the PPP. So many of our small businesses were able to get PPP. There are other small businesses that didn't qualify and didn't get it. So there are some that are not savvy. They need to be taught more things than others. And so you had situations where people didn't have their records and couldn't apply for PPP because there are things missing. Did you pay your payroll tax? Did you do this? Did you do that? Where's your proof of it? I then looked to, and I talked to Ernst & Young last night. I'm telling you, I probably talk about small business at least 2 or 3 times a day to banks, to organizations, to others, because it's to shed some light on it. You talked about that article just for a moment. 3 weeks ago, or either 4 weeks ago, the Wall Street Journal put something out and said, it's interesting, the same number, but they said 41% of small businesses won't make it. This is Andrea Custis's number. It is going to be way over 50% here in the city of Philadelphia that will not come back. They will not come back, right? I'm going to try to get that number, but I'm predicting over 50%. So a couple of things have to happen. I asked myself the question for two of the organizations, and Donovan is not there now, but what's the African American Chamber doing? They're doing some things, but can we do more? And what is the Chamber of Commerce doing here in Philadelphia? Rob Wonderling and his team. You have individuals who are members of the Chamber of Commerce that have so much wealth, that have so much power. So you guys haven't gotten together and had a conversation and said, we're going to focus on small business because that's the engine of this city. And here's what we're going to do. You have some of the most brilliant minds that are the CEOs on that. I'm challenging them now. What are you going to do for small Black businesses? You have the wealth, the power, and the intelligence. I'm done. I think it is a travesty that none of them have stepped up. And I'm not the only one. There are tons of African Americans in this city that is looking at that situation and saying it is pitiful that, first of all, do you recognize the need? Is it important to you? Do you care about it? And do you want to do something about it? So I'll leave that up to them, but they have the power. Like other people told me, I didn't create this as a Black person. You the one that created it. You smart. You gonna make it happen. And I'm not being a smarty pants here, but I'm angry about it. And I am disappointed. I am truly disappointed. The other piece that I would say to all of us, and I'm absolutely doing it, is those Black businesses that I know Beyonce gave NUL a lot of money to post all these different businesses and what they do. We have access to that here. Please support them, buy from them. I mean, absolutely. I don't care whether it's food, whether it's goods. You have an opportunity to spend your money with Black businesses. Really think about it. I think sometimes we forget about it or
Yeah.
we're conscious of it, but just please, when you're going to spend some money, please spend it with the small Black businesses. And then I would also say to others, if you have an opportunity to make a difference and you have different programs and you are putting education in it and you have an opportunity to do some funding, please come and help us with small Black businesses. I am very concerned. I am worried. I do not have all the answers. I have some, and there's some people that are probably far more brilliant than me that can also help us to figure this out. But it's not okay to watch these businesses just go down the drain. Please don't do that. Please.
Absolutely. And so for the
Malik,
sake of,
Malik, I just wanted to add, can we just go to 8:15?
Just one
Because
second, because we have a service that can really be helpful to address Andrea's point. Tasha put it in the chat, so I hope everyone looks. OIC is launching a digital literacy program for small business owners because of the very things that Andrea talked about, people not having the ability to apply for PPP because they didn't have the basic skills. So we're launching a program just for small business owners. The things we do are free. Please contact OIC about that. I want Andrea to know that the chamber is addressing the issue. It is whether it should have been done a long time ago is a whole nother conversation for a glass of wine, but it is a conversation at the table right now about what will occur, because the issue, and Harold Epps makes it very plain, is capital, capital, capital. So in addition to supporting small businesses, part of what we can think about, yes, buy Black. I'm a firm believer in buy Black, but also too, there is collective power. I just want to give you this really quick example and I'm gonna let Chad speak. But OIC exists because Leon Sullivan convinced people to give $10 a month for 36 months in a fund that resulted in the creation of OIC. At one point in time, OIC had 100 properties, training 20,000 people in viable job skills, and used the power of the purse to demand that employers in Philadelphia hire African Americans. That strategy still works today. If we can let go of our own prejudice against each other and come together collectively, a little bit of money from each one of us in a fund to capitalize small businesses would reap huge returns for our community. These are things that we can do. They are not beyond our reach.
absolutely.
yeah, I just wanted to say, for just to respect time, Malik, if we could end maybe by 8:25, because I'm very cognitive of the fact that you've been engaged all day with all of the things that you do. Also, with the things that you've been doing, Judge Hughes, certainly Andrea and myself, that we don't want to lose our audience. We're very appreciative for those who actually have continued to stay here. We had this from 7 o'clock to 8, but it's just been rich. I also just want to take the prerogative to say that even though Malik Boyd is in the role of moderator around entrepreneurship and education and economic literacy, this is a quick paradigm shift. The Holy Spirit just gave this to me. I wish the Holy Spirit gives me a number so I can retire. But Malik, if you could share, I'm sorry, that just came to me. But if you could just share, Malik, some of the things from your rich experiences, what we should be doing around economic development and business in the Black community, I think that would be great. And then after Malik, if we could just, all three of us, Andrea, Judge Hughes, and myself, just hit it real quick, because I don't want us to lose people. But I just think that, like I said, as a man of faith, the Holy Spirit just revealed to me, like, we have a brilliant mind who does this work around economic development, education, and economic literacy, and Malik L. Boyd.
I appreciate that. Humble for that. I will say this, Andrea, you touched a point on the African American Chamber, and Judge Hughes, you reiterated that. I think for the listening audience, one of the major takeaways that we should remember is that the African American chambers around the country we're not the farm league, we are the league. And for far too long, we've allowed people to consider us the G League. We're really the NBA of this. If we're not working, America isn't working. And we've got to hold every other chamber accountable across the city. One of the things that is across the country, but one of the things that is also important is that many of these chambers have conservative interests at the helm. And we've just got to be straight up about it. They're not looking to share, and their leadership reflects protecting suburbia, extracting from the urban area and taking the wealth out to the suburbs. We've got to reverse that in a very forceful and aggressive way with our dollars and cents. As it relates to some of the current events that I've been working on, to be very honest with you, we're at the White House having conversation with guys like J. Ron Smith, Scott Turner over at SBA. The Opportunity Zones is a major plan that is passing us by. If you're not in the Opportunity Zone conversation as an entrepreneur, we're missing a big opportunity. It allows for tax breaks to occur for those who keep their investment inside of your project for 10 years. This is tax-free money going into your investment. And so as you look through these Opportunity Zones, and it's not so partisan that local municipalities did not have a hand in it. In fact, the White House insisted that governors work with local electeds and city council to carve out the Opportunity Zones. So when you see them, know that local electeds were involved. The second thing we have to ask ourselves is, local elected, why did you not tell me about this as a Black business? Why did you not tell me about this opportunity for me to invest and shore up my commercial this and to do a bond stack for my project that helps me survive this landscape? And there are Black businesses that are getting money to the tunes of 1.5 million up to almost $30 million from projects all the way to from textiles to agriculture to retail. And so if you have any project, make sure that your council person knows about it, but more importantly is giving you the information from SBA. We also have an active SBA office that is responsive to your needs as well. The other piece to that is we have to take a look at our commercial corridors. If we're not shoring up these local commercial corridors, the quality of life will diminish no matter what you do for your house or your block. It's that commercial corridor that's going to shore up the financial infusion into your neighborhood. And so whatever we can do, working with Andrea in Urban League and ensuring that we have presence in our local neighborhoods is so crucial. Making sure that if there's workforce training, that's going to be important. To be honest, customer service is everything. It's not just great for Chick-fil-A. It's going to be great for us in the middle of COVID. Some of it very well may be the difference between whether or not someone is going to patronize our business versus another. Those workforce programs are going to be crucial as well. The other piece is paying attention to the digital divide. For those who do not know, we've talked about it over the years. The Amero was the first initial proposal, which was a unified dollar between North America and South America. That plan failed and fizzled in the last previous administration. And in this current administration, they're now having a conversation around a digital dollar itself. And so understanding what that will do to our fiat money, already a debt instrument, understanding your four hierarchies of money, where money is created and how we move it, how we secure it, is going to be crucial. And those are programs that OIC and the Urban League can work with us to ensure that our community is educated. And so my job, honestly, I'm honored to just talk about it every week and make sure it's in the forefront and to scream your passions to the powers that be. And so, Chad, I appreciate that opportunity.
Malik, can I just add one thing to it? As you were speaking, one of the things that our audience needs to understand is that money that came from DC to Governor Wolf, the Pennsylvania Cares, the money for small business was given out to the CDFIs that are in the community. So our small businesses should absolutely be talking to those CDFIs where the people look like me and where you have an opportunity to get a loan and to be treated right. So please make sure that we understand the CDFIs that are in our neighborhoods and that are run by people that look like you, Malik, and look like me.
I'm going to ask if there's any representatives from either organization. I see Brother Varela in the space as well. If you could post some information in reference to CDFIs, just general information to help people understand that and to use it as a takeaway. I know it is 8:21. I want to give 60 seconds at least for us, each one of your panelists, to talk about education. Because if we're not dealing with education, we're going to repeat this cycle all over again. And so for our emerging generation of leaders, how do we ensure that conversations like this aren't just happening on Zoom, but they're happening in the classroom, that they're happening in spaces like micro societies where we're preparing our young folk to deal with business in a hands-on way and application? Chad, I'm gonna start with you and work my way back to Andrea.
Yeah, certainly. I like what the School District of Philadelphia is going to be undertaking this upcoming fall by building in anti-racism curriculum. I think that one of the things that we attempt to do at the Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission and that we are doing is we work in conjunction with the Department of Justice. They have a spirit program and one of our staffers, Tamika Hatcher, will put that into the chat. But what the spirit program does, it works with us in unison to go into the schools and to give advocacy and agency to young people where they become the decision makers. They advocate against all those forms of unlawful discrimination that they experience, whether that's cyberbullying, whether that's bullying because of gender and things of that nature. I think also when we're looking at the school to prison pipeline, we have to look at changing the structural inequality, because we know that Black males and Black females, when it comes to expulsion rates, will get expelled from school where their white counterparts, and I don't have the qualitative or quantitative data with me right now, but what will happen with their white counterparts is they'll get an in-house suspension, or they'll just be told to go back to the classroom. I think the funding of more social workers in schools, school social workers, more nurse interventionists, so that if there's trauma in the community, i.e. a killing of someone's friend on a Saturday or Sunday, that the first thing we want to see happen on a Monday is a trauma nurse that's working with the children around the cycles of grief. So many things are happening in the home, and I'm not talking about from a pathological standpoint, but young people may lose grandmom to type 2 diabetes. They may lose their mother to breast cancer. They may lose their brothers and sisters who are coming back from the war or who have died in war. So I think from a school perspective, it's funding around mentoring programs. And those mentoring programs for me have to be along the indices of CPR, cultural pride reinforcement for young people.
I gave you the sign for 30 seconds and you
No, I
brought
appreciate that.
You brought it right in. No, thank you, Chad. Those are great points. Judge Renee Hughes, your thoughts on education and where we need to be in this space.
So I exist because of the power of education. My parents were absolutely unequivocal that education would change the arc of my life and the arc of my siblings' lives, and it did. Education is the great equalizer. No matter where you start from, education can ensure that you achieve all of your dreams. So I want to be real specific about several things. Number one, OIC has an alternative public high school. It is for kids who are 16 to 21, who are undercredited, who can get an accelerated program. It is 2 tracks. One track will prepare you to go to college if that is your desire. The second track will prepare you to go into a specific workforce development program that we have, that we partner with others to deliver. Because if we do not have the basic education, I think what makes the OIC program so special is that we pair it with what I call life skills. Everybody else, I call them power skills, everybody else calls them life skills. But they are those intangible skills that make you effective in a work environment. That's an integral part of what we offer at OIC. We also offer a high school equivalency, so that if you're past that age of 21, you still need that credential, you can get that at OIC. I also, and I know you guys are tired of hearing me say this, but I really believe I am my brother's keeper, and each one teach one. So you can partner with a public school. You can go in and share your expertise with that school that doesn't have the resources, so that our kids can see successful people like you, that our kids can know about career opportunities, and to know that there is someone who is encouraging their success. The schools welcome that. Do it by Zoom. You can go in when we're permitted to go in. But we need to take responsibility for our own community and go into our schools to make sure that our kids are getting the exposure we need. And Malik, I'm sorry, I'm Southern, I talk a long time.
It's okay. It is quite all right. As a Baptist minister, I've never met a microphone that I don't like. So I get it. Andrea, the last 60
Yeah.
seconds belongs to
Okay,
you.
so let me tell you where I am on education. And I ask you, please, please to understand this because you can advocate. We've been in the school system with Dr. Height a long time. We see about anywhere from 3,000 to 4,000 kids. We have Adopt a School. We have like a track that gets the kids ready for college. On Wednesday, we'll do our virtual empowerment dinner. We have 77 kids that are getting scholarships through the Urban League. So here's where I am. Number one, the most important thing is Dr. Height does not have the funding that he needs in order to provide quality education in every zip code. That's a fact. That's a fact. And let's not blame him. So let's look up at Harrisburg, have the same conversation I've had with Governor Wolf. You ran on being an education mayor. How is it? And I know the math on it. The reason why Dr. Height has less is because you've got more poverty. And where's the income coming from? The taxpayer money, right? So when you look at Dr. Height, he gets $10,000 per kid. Lower Marion, they get $20,000 per kid. How do you have a school and you have one counselor for all the students? He graduated 13,000 kids this summer. 13,000. Where do you think those 13,000 kids are right now? Guess what? A small percentage are going to college. And then you have to say, well, where are they? Like, what are they doing? So guess what? Corporate America, organizations everywhere, you've got to be able to also employ. So number one, he's got to have the funding. We call it fair funding. I just had a town hall with Senator Casey and some other experts. And all of us understand you can sit here and talk. Unless we get that funding for what he needs, we're going to sit here with systemic racism over and over, decades over and over. Where's the money for the black kids that are in North Philly, that are in West Philly? 10 years from now, we're still going to be talking about we don't have fair funding for our school system here. It's systemic racism over and over and over. We've got to make a difference there. He needs more money. Then we've got to figure out, for the kids that aren't going to college, you go into trade school, you go into an apprentice, what is it that we're doing? But those individuals need jobs. What do you think you do when you don't have a job and you don't have anything to do? So we're putting our kids at risk. And so I would say, let's all make sure that we speak out. We speak up on all the legislation. The HEROES Act right now, I think it's Bill 4112 in the Senate. We have to demand more than what we have. And here's the other piece that I talked to Comcast about, and where I worked for 31 years, Verizon. Just had a conversation last night. This whole issue of access to the internet and devices, how are you going to educate me if I don't have access to the internet and I don't have devices? I'm going to be working real closely with Clinton, who is head of all of our legislative policy stuff for the National Urban League, and trying to work with some of these other carriers to say, here's how we need to look at it. Let's all get together, and this is what needs to happen in order for these kids to have internet access. Right now, it looks like a hybrid approach to go back to school. 2 days in school, 3 days at home. All of us know that these kids did not have, some of them had devices but didn't have internet access. So we have to, the funding and the access are two critical pieces. There's tons of other things, but those are the two critical pieces that will make a difference in education in the city.
I think those are great points to stop on. I know time has passed us by. I've been charged with 8:25, and we are now at 8:30, and I do not want to get fired from my post here. So I want to say thank you, number one, to Andrea Custis for joining us today. Judge Renee Caldwell Hughes, thank you for being here today. And to you, Chad Dion Lassiter, for being here as well. This was an amazing virtual town hall. For those who have tuned in, the town hall was titled Leading in Challenging and Complex Times. We had 3 amazing experts and leaders in their own right. This has been presented by Philadelphia OIC, the Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission, and the Urban League of Philadelphia. To our listening audience, please take the chat, copy the resources out of the chat room. And as this Zoom is rebroadcast on the social media, please share it with those you love. Continue the conversations as thought leaders in your own communities and respective circles as well. The time is now 8:31. As our former mayor, John Street, once said, I promise to be brief no matter how long it takes. Well, it only took us 1 hour and 30 minutes. There's so much more to be had, but more importantly, we need your interest. We need your intellect. We need your involvement so that we can make an impact. We are beautiful people, but we are so beautiful when we are together. Thank you so much for tuning in, and please make sure you follow each one of these organizations on their social media pages and join in the conversation with each one of these respective leaders. Have a beautiful evening. It's great to see all of you this night.
Thank you as well, Brother Malik.
Yeah,
you.
thank you, Malik.
Thank you
Did
very
a great
much.
job. Did a great job. Excellent job.
Thank you. You guys take care.
Bye.
All right. Have a blessed night, everyone.